I'm Rhona Pringle. At the moment I'm a postgraduate research student at Newcastle University in the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape. Prior to doing that, I worked for Yorkshire Forward Regional Development Agency for Yorkshire and the Humber region, and I led at that time their Rural Capitals programmes, Renaissance Market Towns, Rural Capital Business Programme and Low Carbon Rural Capitals programmes. And during that time, I was fortunate enough to meet a very inspirational gentleman, Peter Verdaz, who will be giving a presentation this morning, and his account of the transformational work that they've been doing in Güssing in Austria inspired me to do my research, which is on whole settlement approaches to community energy. So all of the presenters and all of the cases that you're going to hear about this morning are from truly inspirational individuals who have done, as Simon said, some incredibly successful, very different work. So I will keep what I'm going to say very short. I'm going to set the context, because what I've been doing is looking at different places that have taken this whole settlement approach to community energy and to low carbon energy. And I want to leave you with just a few of the headline findings that you might want to be thinking about when you hear the presentations this morning and also in the workshop sessions this afternoon. So I've been looking at cases, 6 European cases and 4 UK cases. The 6 from Europe are Samso in Denmark, which is an island community, El Hierro, which is one of the Canary Islands, which is in the map at the bottom there, Jund in Germany, Güssing, which we will hear about, Murek in Austria, and Varese-Ligure in Italy. And again, they have all taken very different approaches to transforming their energy systems, which goes from, for example, Varese and Ligure set about becoming 100% renewable as a community and 100% organic in farming, and have achieved both. The 4 UK settlements that we've been looking at, and I'm not going to talk in detail because there are people much more able than me to talk about Egan, Ashton and Hayes, which were 2 of them. The other communities were Fintry and in Stirlingshire and Hebden Bridge in West Yorkshire. And again, each of those communities has taken a very, very different approach to their energy systems and how people behave with and interact with their energy systems. So Fintry is a place that took a very bold step of wanting to become the first carbon neutral settlement in Scotland, and they took on a mortgage of £2.5 million to buy 1/15 of a wind farm. And they get an income from that. But if you think of a community which is just over 1,000 people taking on that kind of mortgage as a community through a development trust, but what it does is it produces more than 3 times the electricity that the community actually uses. But of course it's part of a large wind farm, and that gets fed straight to the grid, so it's not used by the community. Hebden Bridge is a place that is within Calderdale district, and the approach that's been taken there has been very different because it's a council-led approach, which Calderdale Council in February last year launched a future energy strategy, and that's around changing their energy systems and reducing carbon emissions. So they've set very radical targets, 40% CO2 emission reductions by 2020 and 80% by 2050. And I'll just talk about that in a moment. What's framing my research is, and it's not necessarily what I thought would be framing it when I started, as I've learned doing my postgraduate research, is around capacities. So we have an exceptional mix of people here today, from people here in a professional capacity, people from communities, people here research and academics, and people from local authorities and practitioners. So hopefully you will actually see where you fit in this capacities model. The first one is personal capacities, which is the skills and resources that individuals in places have that can be harnessed to make these changes. Infrastructural capacities are the things we probably tend to think about, what is the energy mix that can be used, what are the renewable energy sources that could be harnessed, as well as what is the existing energy infrastructure in a place. Structural capacity is much more about organisation. So what organisations already exist that could start to look at this, or maybe already are, but could take a further step? What are the organisations that could actually lead or facilitate that change? And then the cultural capacity is a very important one, but a little bit less tangible, which is really to do with the history of a place. And there may be very good reasons why, because of either recent or very distant history, that a community doesn't feel that it's able to make progress, or actually feels that it can. It may be a very independent community that wants to drive forward a transformational energy change. So cultural capacity is intangible, but just as important as the other capacities. And in different ways, in different places, those different capacities will impact on the ability of a community to be able to look at more sustainable energy mixes within that location. And what I want to do is just to finish on 3 of the headline findings from my research so far. The first one is that all of the places that I've looked at as the case study communities have looked at reducing energy demand as one of the first things that they've been doing. So making sure that they're looking at energy efficient buildings, reducing energy consumption, so that if you're looking at producing energy, you don't actually have to produce as much to meet that energy demand. So energy efficiency is very important for all of the communities that I've looked at. One of the interesting things that I found in looking first at the European case study settlements, and then following that and marshalling kind of interesting ideas that had come from these places in Europe, and you'll hear more through Peter about one of those places very shortly. But of those 6 places, 4 of them, so 2/3, were led by the local authority. So the whole community, whole place, whole settlement approach was driven by the local authority. In the UK, only one, Hebden Bridge within Calderdale, has been led by the local authority. And having interviewed senior people within the different local authorities that I've been researching, I've had one chief executive who said, we haven't had anything to do with this at all. It has been absolutely led and driven by the community, and you've got able and capable people in that place. But we've been on the periphery. We've maybe helped out with some insulation in some of those homes, but we really haven't had very much to do with it. The place, Calderdale, has got this big headline vision, and I did question them about, actually, is that the right way to go about, to have a big vision and then to start to look at an action plan, or is it better to have something bottom up and build from there? And the director was quite candid with me, and he said, well, what I think is if the vision doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. So I'll leave you with that thought, because we haven't got the answers yet, because it's very early on in Calderdale's developing their action plan for their energy future strategy. But it is interesting that 3 of the 4 places, so 3/4, have been led by the community rather than by the local authority in the UK, which is slightly different from the European examples. And then the last point that I just wanted to make was in the European cases, again, very prominent has been the power of the individual and the charismatic and dynamic individuals who have led the processes in those locations, which is very similar to the cases in the UK, and you will be hearing from some of those people later on. And we've got a picture here. These gentlemen here are the Fintry Four that they became known as, who really picked up the gauntlet and drove through working with the community. They didn't impose it upon them. They did have a ballot within the community. But there are key individuals, and a question to leave you with is, are you the individual for your community? And you could be in a professional capacity, you could be in a community representative capacity, you could be perhaps as a local authority officer or member. There might be a way for you to be able to do that as well, as a charismatic and dynamic individual. So I'm going to leave it there. That's quite enough from me. What I would like to do is to hand you over to Peter Fadaz. Peter was the Mayor of Gussing for 20 years, recently stepped down. We spent an afternoon yesterday. I said I'd show Peter the sights of Newcastle. He said, I'd like you to take me to two things. The first is the castle. And I said, is there a castle in Newcastle? I wasn't the best guide, I'm afraid. But I'm going to hand over to Peter, who's going to tell you about the remarkable transformation that he has led as a politician within a local authority in Gussing in Austria. Peter.